Okay, so I want you to imagine the ultimate fork in the road. And I don't just mean, the usual life stuff.
Right.
Choosing a college major or figuring out if you should move to the
Or
suburbs.
if you should text your ex.
Exactly. I'm talking about a philosophical crossroads that's um, so fundamental, so high stakes, that it determines the entire trajectory of your consciousness.
It's the moment where two massive systems of thought meet, they shake hands, they agree on the mechanics of how the universe works,
And then just walk away from each other.
and then turn around and walk in completely opposite directions.
Exactly. And the best part about this deep dive we're doing today, the source material doesn't explain this, ancient spiritual split using dusty old scrolls or vague poetry.
Now,
It explains it using the language of something I think we can all relate to.
computer science and video games,
Yeah.
which is a fascinating lens. We're talking about terms like root access, God mode, motion blur, and debugging. To understand concepts that usually get buried in these really esoteric texts, it's a very modern way to decode what the sources call the Great Pivot.
So that's what we're doing today. We're decoding this pivot. We're introducing the two protagonists in this cosmic drama. On one side, you have the architect, which our sources associate with Taoist thought.
And on the other, the Liberator, who's associated with the Buddhist path.
But here's the kicker. They both start on the same team.
They do. Before they can split, they both have to climb the same mountain. They both have to reach the control room of reality.
Okay, let's unpack that, because before we can even get to the control room, we have to understand the default state, the game as it's played by regular people like us.
Right.
The sources start with a concept that sounds a bit like a sci-fi horror movie title, the physics of the murky.
Or primal murkiness.
What are we looking at here?
The murky is the foundational state of our normal everyday experience. And to understand it, we have to look at the motion blur analogy. This is key. Think about a modern video game. If the computer rendered every single frame as a crisp, perfect static image and just flashed them one after another, like click, 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 what would you see?
It would look choppy, super jarring, like a strobe light effect or a really old stop-motion film.
Exactly. It feels totally unnatural to the human eye. So game developers add motion blur. They intentionally blur the gap between frame A and frame B to trick your eye into seeing smooth, continuous movement. They bridge that gap between the 0 and the 1.
And the sources are saying our reality, or at least our perception of it, is doing the same thing.
Precisely. This spiritual motion blur creates the illusion of continuity. It conceals the gap between birth and death, or even more granularly, the gap between a thought arising and a thought passing away.
And it smears it all together.
It smears everything together so we feel like there is a solid, continuous self moving through time.
So my entire personality, my sense of me walking down the street, is basically a graphics rendering trick to keep the gameplay smooth.
In a manner of speaking, yes. Without that blur, your experience would just feel like a fragmented, chaotic data stream. The blur makes it a movie.
Right.
And this is where our two protagonists first show up. The architect, the Taoist perspective, in the specific framework, looks at this blur and doesn't see a trick.
What do they see?
They see the mother of all things.
Right, because without the blur, the game stops being playable. It just becomes a series of static data points.
Exactly. To the architect, this murkiness is the secret source of flow. It's the energy that binds the universe. They argue that you shouldn't try to destroy this blur or clean it up.
Because the blur is life itself.
It is the generative force. It's the magic that makes the simulation immersive.
Okay, so the architect wants to keep the game running smooth. They appreciate the graphics engine. But to do that effectively, or to decide you want to leave, you can't just be a regular player, right?
No.
You need an upgrade. This is where we get to my favorite part of the sources, entering God mode.
This is a critical concept,
Yeah.
and both the architect and the liberator have to reach this state.
And what is it?
The source describes it as achieving a state of upekkha, or deep equanimity.
And the analogy here is the superconductor. I loved this. Break that down for us.
Well, okay, think about electricity. In a normal wire, there's resistance. As electrons flow, they bump into atoms, and that creates heat, and you lose energy. That's just basic physics.
Right, like when my laptop sounds like it's about to take off because I have too many tabs open.
Exactly. That heat is wasted energy. Now, apply that to the mind. In a normal state, that resistance is desire, craving, anxiety.
Wanting things to be different.
Yeah. I want that car. I hate this traffic. I hope they like me. All that friction wastes your spiritual energy.
So equanimity is chilling out so hard you become a superconductor.
Essentially, when the mind becomes perfectly still, deep equanimity mental resistance drops to zero.
And what happens then?
And, just like in physics, when resistance drops to zero, conductivity becomes infinite. You become a spiritual superconductor.
And this is where you get root access.
Yes. In this state of zero resistance, you are no longer just a user logged into a guest account. You have gained root access to the universe's operating system.
The sources say that in this state, your intent changes. It stops being just a wish.
And starts functioning like a command line.
Wow.
That's the terrifying and beautiful part. Because there's no friction, no doubt or fear to buffer the signal, your intent just executes immediately.
Instantly.
Instantly. This is how the sources explain phenomena like miracles or the kasina practices in deep meditation. You aren't asking the universe for a favor. You're typing code directly to the terminal. You are rendering reality.
So if I'm getting this, normal prayer or manifestation is like sending an email to tech support and hoping they get back to you.
Yeah.
But this state, this is typing pseudo commands directly into the prompt.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You are bypassing the user interface entirely. And this is where the architect, the Taoist path, says, we have arrived.
Right. For the architect, this is the pinnacle. You are one with the Tao. You're in the control room.
You can manage the universe perfectly.
You can maintain the balance, keep the seasons turning, ensure the simulation is beautiful and harmonious. You're the perfect system admin.
And honestly, it sounds pretty great. Infinite power, zero friction, and you're running the show. The benevolent gardener of existence.
So here's where it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth would the Liberator, the Buddhist path, look at this situation, look at God mode, and say, nope, I'm out?
It is the great pivot. And it comes down to a very practical, almost economic realization.
Which is?
The sources call it the electricity bill.
The electricity bill. Even God has to pay utilities.
In a sense. The Liberator realizes that even if you can simulate a perfect world, even if you can maintain this God mode for eons, the system still consumes energy.
It's not free.
It's not free. It consumes spiritual energy or soul elements just to keep the server running.
So there's a cost to maintaining the simulation.
And there's an even deeper problem. The Liberator looks at the admin, the God self that is running things, and realizes something shocking.
What?
The admin is just another piece of code.
Wait, so the person in the chair, the me that feels like a god in that state, is also part of the simulation.
Exactly. The God character is written on top of that primal murkiness, that ignorance. It's the ultimate avatar, but it's still an avatar.
So what do they do?
So while the architect uses root access to create and maintain, the Liberator uses root access to trace and debug.
That is such a cool distinction. One is building, the other is auditing.
Yes. The Liberator sees that maintaining the flow requires ignoring the fundamental truth that none of it is real. So they decide to perform the hack.
Let's talk about the hack, because this isn't just pulling the plug. The sources describe a very specific technical process for breaking out of God mode.
It involves manipulating the sampling rate.
Okay, go on.
Remember the motion blur? The way the game smooths over the gap between frames?
Yeah.
The Liberator decides to stop enjoying the smooth movie. Instead, in that state of high-power equanimity, they force their mindfulness to speed up. They crank the sampling rate up to like 1,000 times.
They're trying to see the frames. They're trying to see what happens between the 0 and the 1.
They're trying to catch the universe in the act of refreshing the screen. They apply this high-frequency mindfulness to scan the very bliss they are feeling.
And what do they find? When you zoom in that close on God mode, what's there?
Pixels and friction.
Friction.
They discovered that even in that state of supreme stillness, there is a subtle vibration, a rapid rising and falling. They see that the smoothness was a lie. Hidden inside the stillness is the friction of existence itself.
That sounds very unsettling.
It's meant to be. It's the red pill moment. The audit reveals invalid code.
Invalid code? What does that mean?
The Liberator scans for the user. They look for the self that is supposed to be enjoying this bliss. And when the sampling rate is high enough, they realize there is no user. There is no admin.
There's just the process.
Just the process. The self is flagged as a syntax error.
Wow. So the architect stays to keep the beautiful illusion running, accepting the blur as the mother of all things. The Liberator hacks the frame rate, sees the pixels, realizes there's no player, and decides to shut the machine down.
That is the great pivot. The architect wants to be the perfect manager of the simulation. The liberator wants to exit to the desktop.
To zero.
To zero.
And the sources are really clear that the zero isn't death, right? It's not just nothingness.
No, it's described as the true reality outside the simulation, nirvana, unconditioned. But to the system inside, to the logic of the game, it looks like a crash. It looks like the screen going black.
This really reframes the whole idea of enlightenment. We usually think of it as one mountain peak, but this suggests there are two peaks.
Or rather, a peak and an exit door.
Right. And the most important takeaway from our sources is that the training for both is identical. You cannot choose your path until you're in the control room.
You can't. You can't hack the system if you don't have root access. You can't just be a liberator because you're bored or depressed.
It doesn't work that way.
No. You need that upeka, that superconductor state, just to get to the pivot point. If you're full of resistance and craving, you aren't an architect or a liberator. You're just a character stuck in the game fighting NPCs.
So the differentiator, the thing that determines which way you go, is what you do in that final second of stillness.
It is the direction of your mindfulness. Do you turn it outward to love and nurture the creation? Or do you turn it inward with laser-like precision to deconstruct the creator?
It's the difference between, I love this song, let me turn it up, and wait, how is this sound being produced? Let me take apart the speaker.
A perfect analogy. The architect dances, the liberator dismantles.
You know, what strikes me about this deep dive is how it removes the judgment. We often hear about one path being better or truer.
Right.
But the sources here present them as just a choice of function.
It's a choice of trajectory. The Taoist architect finds home in the balance. They find sanctity in the murkiness. They accept the electricity bill, that cost of spiritual energy, as the price of admission for the beauty of existence. They're willing to pay it.
They're willing to pay it to keep the game running for everyone else.
Whereas the Buddhist liberator says, the cost is too high.
Yes. They see the suffering inherent in any system that requires energy to run. Even a perfect heaven is still a constructed state that will eventually decay. It needs maintenance.
It's not permanent.
So they choose the absolute safety of the unconstructed, the zero.
It's interesting to think about the personality types that would be drawn to each. Yeah. The architect feels very, I don't know, parental, like a cosmic gardener.
Absolutely. It's a path of immense compassion and responsibility. You're taking on the burden of the system. You're the sysadmin who never sleeps, so the users can have a good time. It's very noble.
And the liberator.
The liberator is the ultimate skeptic, the radical scientist, the one who isn't satisfied with a pretty picture if they know it's a projection. It's a path of absolute truth, no matter how dissolving that truth might be.
It really makes you wonder about the gods in various mythologies. Under this framework, they're just really good architects. That is exactly what the source implies. A god, in this context, is a consciousness that has achieved root access and decided to stay.
They're running their own instance of the simulation.
But the liberator would say, even that God is trapped.
Trapped by the electricity bill.
And trapped by the illusion that they exist as a permanent entity.
This is heavy stuff. I mean, we're talking about deconstructing the nature of existence, but it's also incredibly empowering. It suggests that our consciousness isn't just a passive observer.
No.
It has the potential to access the source code.
It does. But we have to remember the prerequisite. We can't just intellectually decide to be an admin or a hacker. We have to do the work to reduce the resistance.
We have to become superconductors first.
Right. As long as we're reacting blindly to the game-chasing coins, fighting bad guys, getting angry at the lag, we are nowhere near the control room. We are just data being processed.
So the first step, regardless of which ending you want, is the same. Stop fighting the game mechanics. Find the stillness.
Find the stillness. Understand the motion blur, even if you aren't ready to stop it yet.
I love that image of the motion blur. It explains so much about why we feel the way we do. We're terrified of the gaps. We're terrified of the flickering. So we cling to the blur because it feels like safety.
And for the architect, it is safety. That is the fundamental disagreement.
Is the blur a warm blanket or is it a blindfold?
That is the question, isn't it? And notice that the source doesn't tell you which one to pick. It just lays out the mechanics. It says, here's the console, here's the code, what do you want to do?
It's the ultimate red pill moment, but way more technical.
And maybe more compassionate. Because both paths lead to a form of mastery. Neither is a failure. One is the mastery of the dream, the other is the mastery of waking up.
So what does this all mean for us, the listeners, who probably aren't floating in a state of perfect equanimity right now? I mean, I got annoyed because the coffee machine was slow this morning. I am definitely not in God mode.
It means we can start looking at our lives differently. When you feel stress or anger or intense craving, just recognize it as resistance in the wire.
You're heating up.
You're heating up. You're losing signal.
And if we can drop that resistance...
Even a little bit.
Yeah.
If we can drop it just a fraction, we start to get a clearer signal. We start to see the intent behind our actions. We gain a tiny bit of admin privileges over our own lives.
So we don't have to go full God mode to benefit from understanding the mechanics.
No. Just realizing that yourself, the part of you that is offended or scared or needy, it's a bit of emotion blur, can take the pressure off. You don't have to defend your ego so hard when you realize it's just a rendering technique.
That is actually a huge relief. My ego is just a graphical setting. I can turn it down to low if I need to save battery.
Essentially, yes. You can optimize your performance without needing to hack the mainframe immediately. You can just run a cleaner system.
I think that's a great place to land. We've covered the physics of the murky, the superconductor state, the command line of intent, and the great pivot between the architect and the liberator.
It is a lot to take in. It essentially remaps the entire spiritual journey onto a motherboard.
It really does. And I want to leave our listener with something to chew on. We talked about the choice to be the admin or the hacker, to maintain the beautiful illusion or to wake up.
It is the ultimate choice,
Yeah.
the only choice that really matters in the long run.
So here's the thought I want you, the listener, to walk away with. Imagine you actually made it. You did the work, you sat in the silence, you dropped the resistance, and you found yourself standing in the control room of reality with root access.
Okay.
Your hands are on the keyboard, the screen shows a universe of infinite beauty entirely under your command, but you also see the exit sign glowing in the corner. Would the satisfaction of being the perfect manager, the beloved creator, be enough for you? Or would that nagging curiosity of what lies outside the computer be too strong to resist?
Would you fix the glitch, or would you become the glitch?
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Keep analyzing.
See you in the next level.